Thank you. I'm not actually sure how to introduce myself because I've changed my name. But everyone knows me as Jade, so it's nice to meet you.
No
it's
worries,
nice
Jade.
to be here.
Yeah.
I would like to ask the question, if your partner doesn't have a belief in God and is very much not on your page, is it possible if you do split and you're working on yourself that you'd be able to perhaps draw them into feeling the same way or feeling the right way or feeling the same loving way?
So is there a way I can manipulate them into doing that, or
No.
is that what you're asking?
No, I'm kind of drawing from earlier on you saying about
I understand the question. I was just making.
will is between two halves of the soul. So if I have a certain will, it can affect the other person. So I guess I'm asking, is there a time when you have to say, this isn't working together anymore and I just have to work on myself?
Certainly, there are times where you have to do that. However, if it's just to do with beliefs, so in other words, you believe in God and they don't, I would suggest that if that is the main sticking point in terms of the relationship, then there's something really going on from an emotional perspective about the beliefs that you're holding on to that need to be addressed. So let's say one person believes in God and the other person is an atheist, right? No belief in God and doesn't want to have a belief in God. Now, one or both of those people are not working through something if they are having trouble with each other just based on this belief.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, I'd suggest it's probably both. Now, many people who believe in God start to get a little sort of self-righteous about it. Yeah? And you find yourself doing that?
Yes.
Yeah? And once you get into that self-righteous place, you then start getting a bit frustrated, yes? A bit frustrated with the person who doesn't believe in God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, frustration is anger, right?
Yep.
Anger is used to control the will of other people.
Yes.
Which is not the loving use of free will.
Mm-hmm.
So I would firstly start by questioning myself and going, okay, what is it that I'm afraid of here that's causing me to project frustration and sometimes anger, right, about this particular issue when aside from that particular issue, the person might be completely loving and honour you in a lot of other ways. Now, I'm not suggesting in your situation that's the case. What I'm suggesting is that we've got to be careful that we're not just using belief in God or lack of it as an excuse to avoid a lot of other problems that are going on within our relationship.
Okay.
So what I notice some people doing is they have a belief in God themselves, and then they go almost condescendingly, they go, well, I don't want you in my life anymore, you don't believe in God. Now, I would suggest that if you don't want them in your life anymore just because of that one thing, that there's a lot more going on than just a belief in God.
Yeah.
Right. So what I would do is I would start looking firstly at that self-righteous sort of attitude that develops, but secondly, start going, okay, what am I avoiding that's not about belief in God? Something that both of us is a problem between both of us. What am I avoiding? And when you start writing a list of it, you might find that list is quite long, right? And then you go, okay, the next step is to approach your partner and go, do you want to work through what I feel are these issues with our relationship? I want a yes or no answer. And I don't only want a yes or no answer, but I want to see a willingness to actually, not a willingness, a desire to actually deal with these problems that I believe are problems in our relationship. Now, the majority of people don't do that in their relationship, and the reason why is because they're afraid. They know that if they do that, they'll probably lose the relationship. And so they don't confront these particular issues. I suggest, though, that if the two of you are soulmates, confronting the issues will draw you together rather than pull you apart.
Okay.
All right? And even if it pulls you apart temporarily, it'll still draw you together later on. Right? Most of us don't want to go there because there is a long list of other problems that we are unwilling to address. And then what we do is we use this as an excuse to create a barrier or a problem.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. And what we need to do is stop doing that. It's almost like using God as an excuse to not address a lot of other issues in our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the better use of your will is to go, okay, this is an issue, but let's look at all of the issues in the relationship that we could resolve without discussing the issue about God. Is there a willingness on both parties to resolve those issues? And don't always think that just because you think it's an issue, that it is actually an issue from God's perspective.
Okay.
Because it might not be. Right?
Okay.
So this is where our relationship with God becomes very important. We can talk about this a bit more. And in fact, in this discussion, the loving use of free will, the reason why I've called it session 1 is because there's going to be many sessions about the subject. And we won't be able to cover all of the information today. But if we can at least see that when we are using one thing as an excuse to avoid a whole heap of other things, we are making a decision to use our will in an unloving way.
Okay.
The honest thing to do and the most loving thing to do would be to use our will to address that list of things that we see as a problem, also understanding that they may not actually be a problem except inside of ourselves.
Okay.
Right? So, for example, I'll give you some examples. A man who comes home from work and doesn't find his meal on the table, right, and then who gets angry with his partner for not having the meal on the table, he thinks that he's right because he's worked all day and she might not have worked all day and everything. He thinks he's right, but the reality is, from God's perspective, he is completely responsible to make his own meal. And any meal that she makes for him is a gift.
Yeah.
By the way, she is completely responsible for her own financial security. And if she expects him to give her half of his money to create her financial security, then she is out of harmony with free will. And unfortunately, in most relationships, both parties are out of harmony with free will in many aspects and issues. And the reason why we get along is because we compromise on these different issues, right? Without working out what is right, from God's perspective, what is right. Yep. So my suggestion is to work out what is right. We are all self-responsible beings, and we need to work out what is right, and that even means discussing with responsibility all of the problems we feel, rather than running away from them.
And also by listening to God's loves, or a list of God's loves and God's truths. Would that be a way as well?
Of course, always. That's the way. So if you're living by yourself, you can still work through this issue by asking yourself the question every single time, if I was at one with God, what would I do? And if you don't know what you would do, then put it on the side column saying, I don't know. Right?
Okay.
But most of the time we do know what we would do. So, for example, if you're at one with God, would you ever be angry with your partner?
No.
No. So you know that you wouldn't be angry. So if you're angry right now with your partner, you know who's out of harmony with love?
Me.
Yeah. Does that make sense? You know. You might not know how.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, I'm angry, so I'm definitely out of harmony with God's love. Now I've got to try and work out with my will how.
And how to stop it.
Well, how to not stop the anger. What causes my anger? You see, like the anger is like a thing that's telling you what's going on. So, for example, what most people try to do is they try to do this. And this is not a loving use of your will, by the way. What they do is they see that they're angry. And so what they do then is they go, I'm angry, that's out of harmony with love. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to not be angry. Now, how successful have you generally found that? Yeah, it doesn't work very well. It's like trying to not do anything when you really want to do it is very, very hard. What we need to do instead is to find out why we are angry. And angry is always about an addiction not being met.
Okay.
So the reason why we're angry is because we have an addiction that's not being met. So then the next question is, what addiction is it?
Okay.
What's the addiction? Now, addictions are all created so that we cover over our
Fear.
which is our main thing that we don't
Okay.
want to feel.
Right.
So I'm angry. I'd be going, okay, I'm angry. I know that's out of harmony with love, but it's pointless me trying to not be angry because that doesn't work. You're not getting rid of the fear that creates it, right? So it doesn't work. So it's pointless trying to not be angry when you're angry. You just go into a room and just, and get angry. Don't dump it on people. Dump it, by yourself somewhere. But do it for the purpose of finding out what it is that's driving your anger. What particular thing is happening inside of yourself that causes you to feel like anger is justified.
Okay.
Right? And that might be, well, today he didn't make me feel loved.
Okay.
Or, he went to work this morning and didn't kiss me.
Mm-hmm.
Might be just as simple as that. Some very basic thing where we didn't feel loved. And the fear is, I don't feel loved. The fear is I'm unlovable. That's the fear I need to get to, right? But I've got the addiction. You've got to kiss me every morning before you go to work. If you don't kiss me, I don't feel loved. This is not good for me, right? And that's the addiction. And then when he doesn't do it, you go, you didn't kiss me this morning. That shows me you don't love me. And off we go down that track. And yet all of it is driven by a fear.
Okay.
Now the fear is unloving, always. It's a false expectation appearing real. It's untruthful. It's unloving. And if we used our will levelingly, we'd feel the fear rather than expressing it through our addictions and our rage. Right? So trying, just give up the trying. Don't give it like that. It's no good. Give that away. Ask yourself the question, what addiction, why am I angry? What addiction am I having that causes me to be angry every time in this situation? And allow yourself to feel the fear that having the addiction not being met causes. Right? So when you don't meet your addiction, you'll feel the fear if you allow yourself to feel it. Now, if you do that in the relationship with all of these different issues, and in the end you still feel that the relationship isn't resolving, then it's got to be because he's not doing that. But I suggest for the majority of people, they haven't done that first. What they do is they go, oh, that all sounds well and good. He should do that.
Yes. Yes, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, and we don't do it ourselves, right? We focus on the other person doing it, and we basically, a lot of times, we wait for the other person to do it all, and then we go, okay, maybe I might start now, right? Because we want to feel safe, and that's a fear.
Or I want a friend to do it exactly the same time as me. We have to feel this right now, quick.
Exactly.
So I'm feeling it.
And in fact, many of the people that I've met who talk about the issue of God versus atheism in their relationship usually have a timing issue in the sense that they want their partner to go through the same emotional experiences that they're going through, and they want the partner to agree with them all at the same time. Yeah. Now that's pretty hard to manage, actually, very hard to create. But also it's an indication that they want to share the process. And even the need to share the process is an addiction. Right? That will cause anger if it's not met. So I see a lot of people wanting to share the process of their own enlightenment, if you like. Share the process of their own growth. And the problem with sharing the process is you're not really fully experiencing it yourself when you do that.
Okay.
Right. So you want to give that up too, because that's an unloving use. It causes pain, right? So it's got to be an unloving use of your will. Every time you want your partner to share your process, he feels like he's being pushed into doing something. So what does he do? He goes, you're not pushing me around anymore. There's the pain. There's the indication that something's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You answered so many other questions as well, so thank you.
Yeah. No